We're going to begin this morning's session with two people who I am extraordinarily fond of for different reasons. 9 hours ago, Nicole Atkins was on stage with these men who have these trombones, and she was singing When the Levee Breaks, and it was awesome. And if anybody was there, you know what I'm talking about. Nicole is here this morning with us, and she is going to be interviewing Congressman Mike Doyle. Mike Doyle is serving his 8th term in Congress. He represents the 14th District in Pennsylvania, which has Pittsburgh and some of the surrounding areas. We are particularly excited to have Congressman Doyle with us because he has been a leader on telecommunications policy issues, some of the stuff that we care about. In particular, for years, he's been our champion on finally passing legislation that's going to expand the low-power radio service to urban areas across the country. He's also a leader on healthcare, on technology policy, and a real advocate for artists and artist rights. So it was really my pleasure to introduce Nicole Atkins and Congressman Mike Doyle.
Thanks for coming out so early. Troopers. Thank you so much for sitting down with me. It's very cool to be up here with you.
So these guys were all at a concert last night till late, and they actually showed up this morning.
Who else was there?
Wow.
Oh, really?
All right,
wow.
let's round of applause.
I thought it was just going to be like you. Amazing. Thanks for coming to that. So we're here today, mostly, you're a big champion of low-powered FM radio, and that's a cause that I got involved with Michael, and I met you a couple months ago when I came up to the Hill for the first time. And I just wanted to ask you, you know, you've done a lot of work getting community radio installed in a lot of cities and towns all over the states. What made you a champion of this? Well,
first of all, when you look at all the consolidation that's taking place in media today, that there's really very little local programming going on. And the thing that I like about low power FM, about community radio, is it gives voice to people that really don't have access to the media anymore. I think that's an important thing in our country. It also is an ability for people to be able to discuss local issues. It's very difficult today to go on any radio dial and hear about things that are happening locally in the community that you live. A lot of people don't understand how important a role low power FM community radio played during Hurricane Katrina. It was a low power FM station that stayed on the air and gave critical information to people living down there during Hurricane Katrina on how to access help. So it just so many, on so many different levels, it's something that's good for the community, it's good for democracy, it gives voice to people who don't have access to media, and all of the arguments against it are so bogus.
That's what I was going to ask you about, because at home, you know, I'm telling, you know, my friends and family about this, and they're like, why would anybody be opposed to that? You know, so why are there some people opposed to getting a bill for more low-powered FM stations?
Well, that's a great question. It's been a long road to get where we're at, and I'm happy to tell you that my Christmas present this year, I believe, will be that we're going to pass this bill out of the House of Representatives before the end of the year. I feel very confident about that. You know, early in the process, objections were raised by the broadcasters on technical grounds. They said that if we gave community radio this third adjacent slot, that it would cause interference. So that was the key reason initially put forward on why we couldn't do this. There was a commission study, the MITRE study, that basically debunked that. I think we know now, and it's been widely acknowledged as a result of that study and by the technical people at FCC, that this is not an issue. So once we were able to debunk the idea that this was going to cause interference and harm other stations, I think that was the most compelling argument stripped away from the debate. I have not heard any valid concern, and we've been trying to work with all the groups, with the Broadcasters Association, with NPR, and others to try to address any legitimate concerns that they might have as a way of blocking this. But I can tell you that the FCC, we just had them in front of our committee a couple of weeks ago, and we have 3 new members on the FCC, and I asked all 5 of them point blank what their feelings were on LPFM and whether or not we should be advancing a piece of legislation such as I've introduced to give more access to local community radio. 5-zip, every member of that commission said there is no reason we shouldn't do this, and they all support us doing it. So all we have to do now is do it. I think we're going to do that this year, so I'm excited about that.
I hope so.
Yeah.
So Michael wanted me to ask you, what's up with you and Girl Talk?
Well, first of all, he's a Pittsburgh boy, so I've got his back. But no, I met Greg Gillis a while back after he had come out with Night Ripper, and you know, there's a lot of a controversy going on this issue of sampling, and how do we strike a fairness when you think about what Greg does. And the other thing I have to admit that he samples my favorite band a lot, and I'll probably show my age, Earth, Wind and Fire, so I'm probably probably showing my age a little bit here. But you know, when you think about his work and how he may sample 2 or 3 seconds of an artist, and he may be using 4 or 5 or 6 different artists on a particular song, and when you look at his latest album, Feed the Animals, I think he samples over 300 artists. The way the law is structured today, if he had to go and get clearances from the people holding the copyrights to those 300 artists that he's sampling, just that process alone would defeat the ability to do what Greg's doing. And I believe his work is transformative. I think that, and if you talk to him, he'll tell you he thinks artists should be compensated for their work. So the question is, what's a fair process to compensate 300 artists that you've used 2 seconds of their song, you know, and you know, that number is, you know, somewhere between $1 and $10,000, but there's got to be...
My solution would just be to, like, cook them dinner and be like,
yes,
use those 2 seconds.
Exactly, and I think it's difficult to write that into law, so it's a tough situation, but I don't think we want to stifle you know, the kind of creativity that come out of the Greg Gillises of the world, and there ought to be a way we can figure this out. So when he started to encounter some problems from the powers to be after his first album, you know, when nobody knew who he was and he didn't have that much notoriety or publicity, there wasn't a problem. Nobody was giving him a hard time. Now it's a little bit of a different story. And as I said, he's a Pittsburgh guy, and we have to stick up for each other. And,
nice.
Yeah. So I just think there should be a way to work that out that's fair to everybody, and not stifle that kind of creativity, because it's neat what he's doing, and it's funny, biomedical engineer by day, Girl Talk by night.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, although I think he's finally given up his day job, I heard, and he's doing this full time now. But so that's the deal.
It's not a bad thing to fall back on. I'm like, house painter.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, back in the 60s and 70s, I mean, the art world, the visual art world, had a lot of these issues arise with copyright. You know, there was, I don't remember her name, but there was a photographer that would take photos of famous photos and then sell them as her own work, which I don't know if I agree with too much. But then they came up with a thing that if you changed at least 30% of the original, you could use it as your own.
Right, and when you think of the sampling, you know, we're talking about a couple of seconds, but I look at it this way. I mean, it's also exposing some artists. Like you know, I'm sure there's a lot of young people out there maybe never heard of Earth, Wind and Fire, and to be exposed to that, and maybe, you know, listen to some of their songs. I mean, I think that's a good thing. I think it works both ways.
Definitely.
So there has to be a way to work those kinds of things out.
Cool. So I came up and spoke to you a few months ago. Michael from FMC brought me up here, and I've never done anything like this before, just so you guys know. I'm sure you can't tell.
She's pretty good at it.
Now, do you get a lot of artists that come up on the Hill to talk to you?
I wouldn't say we get a lot of artists, but I'm encouraged that people, you know, step out of their comfort zone and get involved in these issues. Because if we don't get support at the grassroots level for a lot of these things, believe me, I'd be nowhere with the local community radio bill if it wasn't for the grassroots. It's really the grassroots community that understands the importance and really wants to see this happen that has driven us to the point where we're close to finally getting a bill passed. It would have never happened without grassroots support. So much of what we're trying to do in Congress today, I know people feel like they don't have an effect on things. But it's powerful when people, especially when people from my area, so you know, when we talk about lobbying, it's probably not as important if a celebrity comes into my office to talk to me about an issue as it is a bunch of people that live in Pittsburgh come and talk to me about an issue. So I can't stress how important it is in each and every community that you live in. When you think about the people who care about community radio and a lot of the issues that the Future of Music Coalition cares about, you probably have people in all 435 districts of the House of Representatives. And if you just take some time at the local level to encounter your member of Congress, I can tell you most of us care very deeply about what the people that we're sent down here to represent think. And if they start to hear from people back home, it's effective.
Maybe not so much New Jersey. When we didn't get too far on the low-powered FM conversation with the New Jersey cats.
Well, just remember, we don't need all 435. We just need 218, so it's worth the effort.
The last thing I wanted to ask you about was your thoughts on healthcare and what's happening, because I know we're all kind of, most musicians I know don't have any or have very poor coverage, so.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about in you know, one of the wealthiest countries in the world that we have upwards of 40 million people who either don't have access or can't afford health care. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It's been an interesting debate. I can tell you when I first got home at the end of July, you know, the first kinds of questions we were answering is, are we trying to kill people's grandparents? Once we got through some of that, I'm happy to say that the dialogue as we speak today is much more focused on what some of the key issues are. But all we're trying to accomplish, and I make no secret about it, if I were the benevolent dictator of the United States of America, we'd have a single payer system here yesterday. So that's how I personally feel. But that's not what's on the table right now. So what the attempt is to take the existing system and say, how do we provide coverage to people that don't have it or who can't afford it? And a lot of it, when you look at the insurance industry, and when you look at the record profits in that industry, and yet they still have rules that if you lose your job and you have some sort of a chronic condition, you can't get access to health care. So, you know, one of the things that I think is going to be very positive that comes out of this, regardless of what this final product may or may not look like, is I think we're going to deal with those types of issues in the industry where people are denied access for pre-existing conditions, where people have annual or lifetime caps. You know, over half the bankruptcies in America are happen because people can't pay their medical bills. They have a policy that puts a cap on what they'll pay for a certain condition, and once they go over that cap, the insurance company doesn't pay anymore, and people get in financial difficulty that way. That just makes no sense to me, especially in light of the fact that these are industries that are doing very, very well. You know, we're in a recession right now. Believe me, there's no recession going on in the insurance industry right now. CEOs continue to make $24 million a year. So-called nonprofit insurance companies are sitting on lots of reserves. There's really no excuse why we can't have a situation that says to that industry, we're going to give you 40 million new customers. What are you going to do in return for that? How are you going to make your rates affordable so that these people can afford to buy your insurance and they have access? So that's where the idea of the public option was come in. You know, if you don't want to lower your rates, then we want to compete with you and give people an alternative if you don't want to be competitive. Because in most parts of the country, you have duopolies. You have 2 or 3 insurance companies that dominate a region. In Pittsburgh, where I live, there's just 2 insurance companies. You know, there's Highmark Blue Cross and there's UPMC Medical Plan. That's your choice, two companies. That's not competition. Those are areas that are just sort of, you know, are controlled by 1 or 2 or 3 insurance companies. So we're saying, look, we're going to compete with you if you don't want to be competitive. And you know, it seemed to me that the private sector would, you know, we're supposed to be for competition. It amazes me how my friends on the other side of the aisle like competition when they want it, and don't like it when they don't want it. But we'll get there. I think the American people are starting to understand this better. We've sifted through and debunked a lot of the myths out there about health care. My hope is that we have a bill to vote on before the end of the year. But it's very important to me that we have competition in this system, and we need a public option. And we need to give people choices, and we need to give them access, and hopefully that'll happen by the end of the year.
Hope so.
Yeah.
We're going to take some questions from the audience.
Sure.
Good morning, Congressman Doyle. Thanks for coming.
My pleasure.
I have gotten involved in the last 2 years with Screen Actors Guild and the writers' strike and some of the issues that are going on with them. And from the actors and the writers that I'm talking to, they're going to be confronting some of these same issues in the next couple of years as technology moves on. I kind of wanted to explore a little more with you the idea of media consolidation. And it seems to be the economic times that we're in right now, they seem to think that the more media consolidation idea is better, which apparently was the Clear Channel model of a couple of years ago. And what I wanted to do was just sort of kind of feel you out on how you feel about increasing media consolidation and also copyright term extensions. Would you like to address that? Thank you.
Well, thanks for your question. I'm not so sure that we see benefit to the public with media consolidation. I mean, I'm sure it benefits some people economically that are involved in the consolidation, so I guess good for them. But the question is how does that serve the greater good? All of us as consumers of media in the United States of America. So my focus personally, as a member of a committee that looks at some of these issues, is to look at how it benefits the general population, not how it benefits a very few people that make a great deal of money as this consolidates. So, and I think that's also the duty of all of us in government. We have to take a much broader look at this and say, what's in the best interest of everybody, not what's in the best interest of a few people. So that's, I'm skeptical that more media consolidation would be a good thing. Yes?
Does anybody else have any questions?
Hi, Congressman Doyle. I'm Purvi Patel. I'm with AFTRA. And I actually had a question, something that we've been working on, the Public Performance Rights Act. I was wondering what your position was on that and if you knew about the bill.
Are you speaking about royalties for performers from stations?
Yes, on terrestrial radio.
Yeah.
Artists don't get paid right now for that airplay.
Right. It's interesting. AM/FM radio is the only venue that doesn't pay. They pay the songwriters, but they don't pay the artist. And I think their argument that that they're promoting the artist. I mean, so is every other venue that people can access. And then the other argument is, well, if we have to start paying the artist, then there'll be only talk radio. It will put them out of business. I think that's a bit of hyperbole too. Now there's legislation out there to deal with this. John Conyers has a bill in the House. The one thing about the Conyers bill that I have some questions about is the bill requires that the money be paid half to the artist and half to the record label. I'm not certain why the record label gets half of this deal, unless it's being used to reduce the artist account. I mean, some artists, have an account with a record label, they get some upfront money, and then, they have to pay that down before they can get royalties. Now, if the record label's getting money, and I would say that would have to be applied towards the artist account first to make that whole, then I think that's a reasonable, I mean, I can understand that, but I really don't understand why, other than maybe they were just trying to get the support of the record labels and saying, here's half the money. But I mean, if you look at it strictly from just, that issue, I think that if the money could be applied towards the artist account, then I think that's reasonable, and I could support something like that. But I think it should happen. I really think the broadcasters have a weak argument on this also.
That's great. Congressman Doyle, Nicole, thank you so much for spending time with us this morning.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Nicole.
Thanks.
So we are going to break for about 3 to 4 minutes, and we'll be up next will be Daniel Eck and Casey Ray Hunter talking about Spotify. Thanks.